Hey, and welcome back to Continual Horror. Tonight, we've got a fandom favorite. We're going to be talking about those monsters coming from the deep, the monsters coming from the sky, and the monsters coming from outer space. We're here to talk about kaijus. But before we jump around too far, I'm going to be your host, Jim Nettles. Let's see who has decided to come in and allow us to be monster food. So, Samantha, you are up first.
Hi, I'm Samantha Bryant. I'm best known for writing the Menopausal Superheroes series, and I'm a lifelong fan of Kaiju.
Clay?
I'm Clay Griffith. I write as part of Clay and Susan Griffith. We're probably best known as the authors of the Vampire Empire series.
Bill?
Hi, I'm Bill Mulligan. I am a podcaster, and my first novel, Realm, will be published sometime next year by Falstaff Books.
That's a line we've never heard on the show before.
Yeah.
Steven.
Stephen Van Patten, novelist, short story sliding into anthologies kind of guy, tequila enthusiast. Just love the whole nostalgia from, stuff like Destroy All Monsters and things like that. So here I am.
Yeah, tequila enthusiast. Why are we here? Why are we not recording this in the bar? So Glenn,
My man.
Yeah, I know. So Glenn, Glenn's the reason we're not recording this in the bar. So,
That's right. A couple of drinks, I'm dangerous. So I'm Glenn Parris. I write in several genres. I write science fiction, vampire science fiction, vampire fantasy. I write a little bit for Marvel. I write medical, pharmaceutical espionage, and I like to twist kaiju. So my latest novel, Dragon's Heir, takes a completely different turn on very big creatures with plates on their backs.
and Greg.
Hi, I'm Greg Uchrin, and I am a cartoonist. I was doing a political cartoons from about 2003 to 2015 when I gave it up because I ran out of ideas. And I started repeating myself. But I've been a fan of kaiju ever since second grade, which was about 57, 58 when King Kong and when Godzilla came on $1 Million Movie for the first time with Raymond Burr.
So I think that's a great place to start. I remember the first time that I saw what I had no idea about, but it was that great film of Godzilla. I remember seeing it on, it was a Sunday afternoon, and this big lizard monster comes trotting out in a really bad rubber suit, and I was hooked. So Samantha, what got your addiction to kaiju started?
Oh, like all the good stuff, it's my dad's fault. We have an affinity for movies that some people think are bad. We spent a lot of my childhood watching them together. So often those older, like still black and white 1950s kaiju movies would be on in the afternoon once we ran out of cartoons. And especially if it was rainy outside, I would sit there and watch them with my dad.
Clay, how about you?
Yeah, very similar. I was an old movie buff primarily through my dad, although he wasn't a monster guy per se. But yeah, the afternoon movies, and the first one I remember though was, I believe they had titled it for the English version, Godzilla versus the Thing, which was Mothra. But
Your favorite?
It was Godzilla versus the Thing for me on the old black and white Zenith. A lot of the movies that were in color, actually, I remember vividly in black and white because I saw them on a black and white television. So later when I saw them in color, I was stunned by how bright they were.
Bill?
Okay, so this is a little hard to explain, but I grew up in upstate New York, and every Thanksgiving, they would show kaiju movies on Channel 5. And I don't know what the connection is. They were mostly gorilla movies, and it was King Kong, Son of Kong, Mighty Joe Young, King Kong versus Godzilla. that's when I wasn't eating turkey, that's what I was watching. These were amazing, and this happened year after year after year. And then we also had the 4:30 movie, which would just pick a movie and show it every day at 4:30, which does make sense. And one week it was Godzilla. I watched it 5 times. I watched it every day it was on. It absolutely hooked me. So these movies bring back, even the newer ones really bring back childhood memories, make me feel all warm and fuzzy watching cities burn to the ground.
I'm going to tell you, Bill.
Our $1 million movie was, they showed it twice a day, and you could have watched, and 3 times on Saturday and Sunday. So you could have watched Godzilla 16 times that week.
Wonderful.
It was on.
Mm-hmm. Bill, I have to tell you, you just disappointed me. You broke my heart. I was expecting to see a 120-foot tall turkey raiding New York.
Yeah.
So, Stephen, how about you? What was your introduction?
Well, I was kind of a latchkey kid, and my mom's worked nights, so I had a lot of unsupervised television viewing. And just picking up where Bill was, there was the Thanksgiving stuff, but there was, just general creature feature, if everybody remembers that, that sort of thing would kind of be rotating through either Channel 5 or Pix or something along those lines. And Godzilla was kind of a babysitter to some degree, because instead of doing my homework, instead of whatever, I'm watching him either destroy Tokyo or defend Tokyo. He's kind of gone through some phases, I guess. It's like a love-hate relationship, I suppose. But just all the whole little details, and and I think what really got me was not that it makes any sense at all, but the little Shojubin, the little girls in the case that came whenever Mothra showed up,
right,
they got me. That's what got me, and the fact that they can tell you what a giant caterpillar why he's actually here, or why she's here, and that whole bit of business, and that was just, for a little kid, that was just bananas. So I was in.
Glenn, how about you? What was your introduction into the world?
Well, I remember, I grew up in Queens, so, I remember WPIX and Chiller Theater on Channel 5 as a kid. But what really, I guess, got me into it, I was a big fan of 1950s Japanese anime. Astro Boy, Godzilla, Gigantor, Marine Boy, that kind of stuff. And then when I started watching the monster movies with Godzilla, I can't even remember most of the other ones, Mothra and Rodan and Mecha Godzilla, all kind of stuff. But Godzilla was terrific. Just to see him breathe fire, I was like, this is so cool. And his plates lit up when he did it. I love that stuff.
Greg, you started out by saying you got your introduction when Godzilla first got to the States. So what was it about that really drew you in that first time as a kid?
I was in 2nd grade. I was just awed by this giant monster, and especially the scene where he walks through the wires and the high voltage wires, and steps on a railroad train. Well, he doesn't step on the railroad train, but the railroad train runs into his foot. It was just a wild movie. I had no expectation how much I would enjoy it. I was only 7 or 8, so I watched it about 5 times that week. Tried to write my own version of Godzilla, but of course at that age I couldn't go very far with it.
The killer goldfish. So Clay, now that you've had a few years to ruminate on the grand kaiju mythology, what is your favorite today, and why? What is it that's still holding you to the fandom, to the story?
My favorite movie or my favorite monster?
Your favorite monster?
Well,
Mothra?
I mean, not yet, man. We haven't been far enough into this thing. Mothra is okay. It's got to be Godzilla. I mean, he's the king. He's the man. There's something. There is a distinction, though, to me between certain of the Japanese giant monsters. Godzilla, I never found any of them scary. They were comforting. They were very, even when he was tearing up cities. Now, a little bit of a caveat. You watch the original Japanese version of Godzilla, and it's a very effective movie. Not the Raymond Burr one, but the original. It's actually pretty strong. But when they made later ones, like, for instance, War of the Gargantuas, I think it's called, where the monsters are giant, but they move really fast. That really creeps me out for some reason. That, even like Godzilla versus King Kong moves really fast. And watching a giant thing move fast always bothered me when I was a kid. It kind of bothers me now still. But back to your original question, of course, Godzilla is the one. He anchors all the movies. Without him, I don't know that I'd be as fascinated with it as I am.
Bill?
Yeah, I have to agree. I mean, Godzilla, he gets number one. My second favorite, Biollante. I loved Biollante. It's probably the closest to Godzilla versus Cthulhu that we're ever going to get. It is such a different monster from all the others. It's such an odd movie, actually. But you know, all that's listen. I love them all, even Megalon a little. But I do have to have something special for Mothra, because the first date that my wife and I went on was basically watching the laser disc of the second Godzilla versus Mothra, the more modern one. And beautiful, you know, the better special effects and everything. So all of these films, they bring back memories, because I can almost remember where I was watching each one of them. So, you know, there's been a lot of changes in my life, but watching Godzilla movies has gone all the way through. And here I am, I'm almost 62 and they're still making them. So it's going to be cradle to grave. I'll be able to mark all the various parts of my life with kaiju movies.
Steven, how about you?
Well, I mean, yeah, I guess pretty much like everybody else, Godzilla is the guy. But you know, just random thoughts here. As I've gotten older, I've certainly appreciated the message behind Godzilla versus the Smog Monster. Mothra, you know, it going back to the little girls, you know, that you know, I just love that whole scenario, even though it makes absolutely no sense. I used to like Rodan a lot more than I do now. I mean, I dug this one thing where they kind of showed him like flying off of Monster Island. I guess he was picking up a dolphin or something like that. I was like, oh, that's cool. So he eats dolphins. Wait, no, he's not supposed to eat dolphins. You're not supposed to eat dolphins. What are you doing? But then you got to remember, you know, it's a Japanese flick and they're not that worried about that sort of thing. You know, I appreciate a lot of different things. I appreciate the music. I just wanted to throw that in there. The music, the very specific theme for Godzilla, the very specific theme for when humanity decides to stand up to Godzilla, like that marching thing that I imagine you all know what I'm talking about. I just love love the music.
All the little tiny tanks come over the
yes, exactly.
Music. Yeah,
exactly.
I was surprised once I was going to a Cherry Blossom Festival in Washington, D.C. And suddenly I heard over the loudspeakers all of the Godzilla music. And there was a Godzilla exhibit for the Cherry Blossom Festival. I was amazed. It was wonderful.
That makes perfect sense to me.
Uh-huh.
Glenn, how about you? You know, it's the weirdest thing. Thinking about this, it never occurred to me how Godzilla inspired one of my main characters in my novel Dragon's Heir. You know, he's not a dragon, but he's, as Clay was saying, he's smart, he's big, and he's really fast, and they fight really well. You know, the plates on the back move, and I just never connected him with Godzilla until we just started talking. It was the weirdest thing. But I did like the way nothing seemed to hurt Godzilla. Not missiles, not machine guns, not tanks. You know, this completely invincible force of nature that, you know, just, you know, wanted to get past and really wasn't bothering anybody until he started screwing with them. You know, I just love that whole theme.
And if somebody had just given him a Valentine's Day card, it would have all been fine.
Right. Just
Greg,
get out
how
of the
about
way and you'll be fine.
Or a cigar, either one. So, Greg, I'm gonna be mean. Which Godzilla is your favorite?
The original Japanese one, the first one, because I didn't see it until maybe about 5 or 6 years ago when they started bringing it out on DVD and Blu-ray, because they had remastered the whole thing, and I was like, holy mackerel, this is eliminating the 4-letter word that I actually said. This is no wonder they couldn't make this under MacArthur. It's really sticking it to the Americans about the H-bomb and everything. Mm-hmm. And it had a lot of tragedy in it. Let me see. It was an amazing experience to see it and compare it to the Raymond Burr one that I grew up with.
Samantha?
So, so far as like which Godzilla I like the look of the best, I think I like Shin Godzilla. The red in him, and in the beginning, when you don't, you know, if you could walk in blind, it's hard to walk in blind to one of these movies now. You wouldn't necessarily know that's Godzilla at the beginning when you got the weird larval version of him. Yeah, he was just so gross. And so I think he's my favorite Godzilla. But I think my favorite Kaiju movies are the ones where I get multiple monsters. Like, you know, recently I got to see Destroy All Monsters on the big screen. And that was so much fun. The whole idea of Monster Island. And I think that's the one you were talking about, Stephen, where Rodan goes and catches the dolphin. Mm-hmm. I remember that. Yeah. And I'm thinking they had to make this tiny little dolphin so that he would look big. You know, the model work is a lot of fun in those old ones. But the more Kaiju, the better. Like I like Godzilla by himself, but he's more fun when he's got another Kaiju to fight, or the ones where they kind of come together and work together, and you get to kind of see all the monster subtext, like which ones he likes better than other ones and who's in charge and all of that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. I love that the best. And my youngest kid is now 15 and is super into Kaiju. Like they hopefully this, you know, they don't see this video. I don't think they watch my author life stuff, but they're getting this big awesome book with all the Godzilla movies in it as a holiday gift this Hanukkah. And we've been going to things together, so I'm continuing, I guess, that tradition. I watched them with my dad, and now they're watching them with their mom.
So now I'm going to throw one of those difficult questions out there. And Bill, I'm going to start with you. We're looking at, you know, we've gone from, you know, if I look at the oldest King Kong movies, you were looking at a lot of stop motion animation. You know, we go through 50s, 60s, 70s, where we see guys dressed in rubber suits and working with miniatures and physical props. And now when we catch the latest Kaiju movies, it's all CGI. You know, it's green screen and CGI. As a film guy and for yourself personally, which one of these works best for you for the story? What works for you the most?
Wow. I love stop motion. Stop motion is what got me into films. It's what got me into making films. It's what got me into loving films. It will always be my first love. That being said, it only works when you have a genius doing it. You need a Willis O'Brien, you need a Ray Harryhausen or a Jim Danforth. If it's subpar stop motion, is pretty subpar. It might be better going with a really well done suit. And similarly with CGI, CGI can look fantastic if you're James Cameron and they're giving you Avatar money. But if you're just making a regular movie, it's probably going to look terrible. So I think in general, I feel crazy even saying this. I think a lot of times the man in suit way of going is the way to go, because it allows you to do a lot of things that cost-wise you probably can't do. I love the 3 movies that Eugene Laurie made: Beast from 20,000 Fathoms with Harryhausen, The Giant Behemoth with Willis O'Brien, and then Gorgo with a guy in a suit. They're the same dang movie 3 times. They're all great. Every single one of them is great. But I Gorgo was able to do some things that the others had a hard time doing. So I don't know. My personal feeling, I wish that if they're going to make these, and maybe this is what they're doing, I don't really know, do a man in suit and sweeten it with some CGI, because CGI is great for things like hiding zippers and giving your atomic breath, make it look more than we just shoved a fire extinguisher down his throat. There's so much you can do with that technology. Use that, but don't be either or. They remade The Thing, John Carpenter's The Thing, and it was all CGI and nobody remembers it. And if they had just gone with some of the practical effects, but using some of the CGI that we have now to do a few shots that we couldn't do before, I think that would have been solid. But they're not asking me, so I don't know.
So Steve,
It's complicated.
That's why I went to you with that one. I had that question in the bank just for you.
Thank you.
So Stephen, when you look at the films, when you look at the storytelling, because again, some of these have fantastic special effects, and sometimes it's a matter of the special effects are so bad, they're fun and fantastic. So what is it that works most for you, that pulls you into the story, that pulls you into the monster, that pulls you into the creature? What's the most fun for you to watch?
Well, going back to Destroy All Monsters, because somehow that particular suit, that particular, methodology, like he was actually able to convey some moods in that one, like some real, like some real pimp stuff, yeah, I'm Godzilla, and this is what it's going to be. I can't even explain it, but you could just kind of the way they worked it out, because I remember Kong versus Godzilla, those suits, the expressions weren't quite there, and everything. I mean, the fight scenes were fun, especially when you're younger and you don't necessarily have that visual eye yet. But I just remember Destroy All Monsters and a couple of other ones. So it's like that when they managed to give him a little personality, I guess, with the rubber suit, that always struck me as that successful. I enjoy the new stuff. And the thing I've noticed all the way around is how they kind of downplay what the body count would be if this was actually happening. Like, just to kind of keep the monsters sympathetic, we kind of gloss over the fact that probably a few thousand people have now died. So that's at least, and the half of the drama that the human characters go through, of course, is the evacuation process. And, you're kind of like, okay, so you've got 6 hours to do what? It's all kind of just like, you really just have to, like, a lot of it, you just kind of have to take common sense and put her off to the side for a little while, let her like take a break in order to really enjoy any of it. But I find value in all of it, I guess, just between nostalgia and actual execution with the new stuff, it's all fun to me.
Glenn?
Well, for me, and y'all going to hate me for my lack of nostalgia, I really like the CGI versions of all this stuff. I mean, the guy in the rubber suit, you know, I would really have to suspend disbelief, even as a kid, to really enjoy that. But the CGI is so good, but I will preface that with, you got to have a good story. CGI, the best special effects in the world, just don't mean a lot to me if I don't have story and if I don't believe the characters that are relating to one another in the story. If you don't have that, you lose me every time, no matter how good the special effects are.
Greg?
What am I supposed to do? What am I supposed to be
Well,
answering?
all right. So for you, what makes the best movies? Do you know, what are the elements you like the most when you're looking at these?
I want to have a good story. I don't care whether it's a suitmation or a CGI. The CGI has been getting really, really good, especially like the Kong versus Godzilla, that Skull Island. The CGI was very good on that. But I'll tell you what gets me as I dislike. It was the first American Godzilla, where we had this monster that seemed to be going at the speed of light. It was like too fast for, you know, he just ran through buildings. And you're going, wait a minute, doesn't he have any weight?
Are you talking about the Matthew Broderick?
Yeah, that one.
Mhm.
Oh God,
That was horrible.
we don't talk
Yes.
about that.
That was a war crime.
Yes.
Yes, it was.
I agree.
Yeah, and that one.
Renamed it. We renamed that one Bruno because we don't talk about it.
Okay.
Well, that was the Fight Club of Godzilla movies. You know, first rule of Godzilla:
was
don't talk
so
about it.
bad.
Samantha, how about you?
Well, I'm like Steven. I love them all for different reasons. They hit very different notes for me. When I'm watching one of the rubber suit ones, I laugh so much, and there are so many moments where, you know, something happens and you can't help it. You just laugh out loud, but and it's joyful and it's fun, but also definitely towards cheesy. And you know, I look at the more recent ones, like I think the movie that pulled me kind of back in after kind of like, I loved Kaiju movies when I was a kid. I don't think I especially paid attention to them when I was a younger adult, like when I was in my 20s and 30s. But then, shoot, what's the name of it? The one where you're drift compatible and it's
Pacific Rim.
Yeah.
Pacific
There we
Rim.
go. Thank you.
Mhm.
The Pacific Rim, I think, is what pulled me back in and made me remember how much I really liked Kaiju movies. And I've really liked the MonsterVerse stuff that's, you know, the ones that Millie Bobby Brown is in, which, you know, was a fun way to get my kid to watch with me because they were a fan thanks to Stranger Things. And those are fun in a completely different way, though. We're more likely to like do the jump out of our seat and cheer kind of moment, kind of like we're watching superhero movies, than the laughing, you know. And so I love them both, but they hit completely different notes. The only thing they have in common, I guess, is that they're both about big monsters.
Clay, how about you?
Yeah, I agree with what Samantha said. Actually, that you sort of hold the newer movies, or at least I do, to a different standard than the older ones. With the older ones, this is probably a bad thing for a writer to say, I don't care anything about character. I don't care anything about plot. As long as they have a couple of elements, I want that fishing boat sunk in the first 10 minutes. I want the monster approach. I want the army to move in. I want some power lines down. And that's all I need from it's like a Hercules movie. Nobody's watching Hercules for plot because nobody knows what's going on. But I love Hercules movies. Maybe I just like big, oily Italian muscle men, but that's a whole nother, that's another panel.
That's Susan's influence on you. We know.
But the more modern ones, I like the MonsterVerse ones too, actually, and they are a little more dependent on character and plot. And I expect character and plot from them. The fishing boat isn't enough, and the army moving in isn't enough anymore, because those movies are telling me I'm putting a lot of money into this and I'm putting a lot of time and effort into it, so it's going to be a movie, and so I judge it differently than I judge Godzilla versus the Smog Monster.
So in other words, which way are you falling down on the line here about the Matthew Broderick Godzilla movie? Because you got all the things to check the boxes in the first 10 minutes, but is that the one that broke you? When I saw the Matthew Broderick version, I came out. Who were the producers of that? That was the Emmerich and Devlin and Emmerich.
Independence Day, right?
Yeah, I swore I would never go to another movie by either of those two guys, and I have not. And I have not seen another movie. And occasionally I'll flip one on television and I go, oh, what? This looks kind of, oh no, it's them. And I have to flip off of it because of their Godzilla movie. I'll go to my grave never watching another movie by them.
We're going to play Independence Day at your funeral. So, which is hopefully not coming anytime soon. So
it's Tuesday.
Oh, Tuesday? You got it scheduled. So, Stephen, I'm going to let you kick off with the real fun questions now. What is your your most favorite monster battle movie where there's at least two of them in there? Who's going at who? And for a bonus question, in what case did you think that the monster got robbed? The one that lost.
Wow. Was it, well, I want to say maybe with Godzilla versus Megalon. I want to say that because I'm trying to, well, the other monster that came to back him up, and then we had Jet Jaguar. Yeah, Jet Jaguar.
My hair is kind of Jet Jaguar-y tonight.
You know, I having, you know, not knowing you very well, I wasn't going to bring that up, but yes. But I really got into that because, you know, it was like this robot that was with these little kids, and I was a little kid, so it was like the emotions that one got out of me were just like wow. And yeah, I mean, you know, it's like you're kind of rooting for Godzilla, but you know, like I said earlier, you know, his personality is so like, you know, unpredictable sometimes. It's like, well, maybe you do want to, you know, see him, you know, catch one. And then these, you know, Jet Jaguar comes out and he's doing his thing, and he's like, and, you know, and he's like doing a rope-a-dope and all this other stuff, and it was bananas. You know, so that's definitely like my fave as far as all that goes.
So Glenn, what's your favorite monster versus monster battle?
I guess it's Godzilla versus King Kong, but I think I was disappointed in that because I like the knockout kind of conflict. I'd always thought that Godzilla should be able to cut King Kong in half with his fiery breath, and you know, game over. You know, and you know, not using it, you know, to cut off his head or blind him. I was like, what is the matter with this monster? No wonder they went extinct now. But I think that, you know, a lot of the subsequent ones, they just seem like sequels to me, and they seem second rate. That the first one that I saw was the Raymond Burr version, and I really liked that one. And the very latest ones with the CGI, I like the CGI, but the stories just kind of left me flat. And I think that a lot of that was because when I first got introduced to it, I was a kid. And, you know, I saw it through the eyes of a child. Having seen the story over and over and over again, you know, now you really have to bring it if you're going to entertain me with the story. And I always have to have story, no matter how good I've told you this before, no matter how good the special effects are. So, you know, I like a good fight, if there's some really good moves in it. And I think it takes CGI to do that. The rubber suits, they just kind of wiggle when you get punched or shot with a tank. So yeah, I mean, the early ones I like because they were new to me. And I really got into, being able to melt everything with that fiery breath. But I mean, Godzilla and King Kong, or Godzilla and Rodan are the only ones I remember. But Rodan, just didn't have enough personality. Kong did. And I like the idea of the toe-to-toe with them, but I still think that Godzilla should have been able to cut him in half. I was disappointed.
Greg?
Well, for a really perverse reason, I like Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla because he's fighting himself only in a mechanical form, and we get to have the sumo wrestling business, that the whole thing is actually, the fights are all based on anyway. So it's just a stupid movie. That's why I like it.
All right, Samantha, save us.
There is no salvation.
So I'm fond of Ghidorah, the three-headed monster. I really like the old one when it's a rubber suit and none of its movements make any sense. You're like, that creature could not actually move the way it's built. But it makes for great fun with the fight that, you've got one head on the ground, but here comes another one getting you. And then his tail has a spike, there's just lots of fun potential in that for the fight. And when it was the rubber suit version, I loved it. And I also loved it when it came back in the monster verse and they were able to give it movement that you felt like, oh gosh, that does work. That's maybe what the Hydra was like. Gosh, the Hydra's scarier than I ever imagined it. There, multiple heads, more teeth. Yeah, that works for me. But I'm with Glenn on the Kong versus Godzilla, especially the more recent one. I kind of felt like they wrote it knowing they shouldn't let one side or the other win. It's like Batman versus Superman or something, right? We always have to come to a stymie. Nobody ever actually gets to win. But if I was betting on who would win, as much as I love King Kong, he's toast. Literal toast.
They had to give him an axe. They had to give him the axe.
I mean, it's like watching Robin fight Bruce Lee. It's not a real contest. You know how it's going to end. This fighting to a standstill is it's silly.
Yeah.
And
Clay,
Burt
how
Ward
about-
looks terrified when you actually
should.
know what happened and you look at that scene. Not to take us off track, but yeah, he looks terrified.
We're on a track. How'd that happen?
It was one of the little model trains.
No. I felt something stub a toe. So Clay, how about you? What's your favorite monster versus monster?
Actually, I think my favorite one is one I mentioned earlier, which is the War of the Gargantuas. It's sort of, there's the brown ogre, I don't know what they are, and a green one. I think those are the colors. And they're guys in suits, and they move really fast, and they run through villages, like they're running out to get the paper in the morning. And and they do like cannonballs off the coastline into the ocean, and it's just that the speed and the scale. Now, as someone was mentioning earlier, I shouldn't bring up the Broderick run again, but the speed of that Godzilla, which was completely weightless and ignored physics, yeah, that was horrific. But these guys are fast like just a guy running, like a big guy running through a small village. And I like the fighting in that. I don't remember who wins, the green one or the brown one. I have no clue. But I just love these two guys, these hairy dudes tussling on top of, small villages. It just looked cool.
Billy, do you like gladiator movies?
Are you kidding?
You ever been in a
Gladiator on
prison?
Pretty used to watch those in the Turkish prison I was in.
Oh,
Right.
Oh, nice.
yikes.
And I think that's why we called that the Matrixzilla, was the fact that physics didn't matter and it just sort of flowed everywhere. So
And he was
Bill,
different sizes at different times.
Yeah.
Ridiculous.
it was mind over matter, and it was all just in the metaverse. So Bill, how about you? What's your favorite monster
Well, I
versus
want to
monster
point out
battle?
one thing that they went to great lengths to explain that while Godzilla has a brain the size of a walnut, Kong's is like 10 times a normal gorilla brain. So he's way smarter than Godzilla. But you know what? I hated that. I was always rooting for Godzilla. And look, King Kong's a better person. Yes. But I can go to a zoo now and look at a gorilla. He'll be just sitting in the corner, munching on some mulberry leaves and picking his nose. It's not very exciting. Of course, I'm going to be rooting for the dinosaur. I'm rooting for the dinosaurs when they're velociraptors and they're killing people. I mean, that's how far down the rabbit hole I am. One that Samantha actually mentioned, I love Destroy All Monsters. And the reason I love that fight most of all is because I had a Super 8 projector, because of course I did. And I got the, and this one was like 10-minute color and sound. So this is the most expensive toy I had at the time of Destroy All Monsters. They would take the films and crush them down to 10 minutes. And for this one, it was pretty simple. They just showed the end battle. So I watched it over and over again. I still have it somewhere. I'm sure if I ran it through now, it's just completely ruined, because every time you run a Super 8 film, you lose a little bit more of it. I loved it. It was so great. Now, you ask who got robbed. Ghidorah got robbed. That was a total farce. Every monster on Earth versus Ghidorah. Yeah, he's got 3 heads. You know how many arms he has? None. He didn't have a chance. He got taken out by Gorosaurus. Baby Godzilla took out one of the heads. I mean, this was the most unfair fight ever. But I was cheering the whole time.
All right, so we're going to get away from Godzilla a little bit. Let's talk about more of the modern era of kaiju, because we're seeing, a lot more monsters brought. We've already talked a little bit about Pacific Rim. We've also had, things like the Cloverfield monster. We're seeing a lot more new kaiju brought into the modern era. And of course, I think CGI gives us some more options, but it also gives a little bit more in terms of the storytelling. So Glenn, for you, in this modern era, if we get away from Godzilla, what are the stories? What are the movies? Which one is really working for you that, is setting the standard for the next generation of kaiju?
Actually, and of course the sequel is coming up soon. Avatar. I love the final battle between Jake Sully and Stephen Lang. And then it had flavors of Mechagodzilla versus Godzilla, and the fight was great. What's going to win out? Alien biology or human technology. So I think that was that, and the story I thought was great. So again, there we go again. That hooked me. But one of the best scenes that I've seen in a while in modern era has got to be Predator versus Alien. And I just love the fact that the alien was just about to run his mouth through the Predator and kill him. And Predator used that laser lasso or whatever it is and cut him in half, right before he struck him, just kind of slid off. I love that crap. That was great.
Basically, if they cut someone in half in any movie, you're in.
Yeah, that's it.
How many times have you done that to your dragon?
It goes back to the magicians, cutting the world in half. It's like, how did they do that? I want to see blood.
Greg, how about you? In the modern era of the kaiju, what are you the fan of these days?
Well, I did like all of those, the Skull Island and the sequel to it, because the effects were really good. But I'm wondering, I have a weird question. What about what's gone on in anime like Attack on Titan? There are these giant creatures, giant men. They're supposedly men, but they are actually giant monsters. Anybody got any ideas on those?
They were terrifying, absolutely terrifying, scarier than any other kaiju. I mean, they just eat you.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, and you can turn into one. So that's an interesting way of approaching the story.
And I'm trying to figure out how I sign up to become a kaiju. I think I'm just game for it now.
I love anime. I mean, I've loved it since I was a little kid, before I could even read, and I love it today. I love anime.
So Samantha, how about you?
Well, I already talked about Pacific Rim. The other movie that came to mind for me it's a little debatable whether it's a kaiju movie or just a more generalized monster movie. It's a Korean one called The Host. Yeah, that's what it's called in English. I didn't watch it in Korean because I don't speak Korean. But there was this horrible fish monster, and oh my gosh, it was disgusting and terrifying, and a lot of the things that I really enjoy in the more modern ones. I feel like the more modern ones, I'm looking for the feeling of threat and tension, and more of the same reasons that I enjoy horror movies and that I enjoy monster movies than compared to the old ones where I'm going in there looking for something else, something like a little more like pulp fun. They're not the same thing at all. But The Host is a good one, but like I said, that's a little debatable. I don't know, is it a horror movie, is it a monster movie, is it a kaiju movie? I don't know.
Play of the modern era.
A lot of the new big thing movies don't appeal to me that much. I like the monster universe stuff, okay. But speaking of which,
it's a giant cat.
It's Kitty Harryhausen.
I need a Tonka tank out here. Well, for instance, Pacific Rim, although the story was interesting, and Transformers, if you want to include that, because they're big. I find the visuals off-putting. They're confusing to me, particularly Transformers. I can't tell what's going on.
Yeah.
Transformers was like metal hits metal. Which metal am I cheering for? I can't tell.
And I just, it moves too fast for someone who's spent the entire evening talking about how he loves big things that move fast. Now I'm going to call myself a liar. It moves too fast, and I'm old and I can't keep up with it.
It's incoherent.
Yeah, well, no, thank you. Good.
Get off my lawn.
There was one that came out might be 10 years ago now. I'm not sure. And I think it was just called Monsters, about monsters, about an area like on the border of Mexico and America that had been sealed off because there were things there. And some people went in and had to come out. There was a sequel that I didn't like. But the first one I think is a really nice, relatively low budget for a giant monster thing, because you don't really see the giant monsters that often. And so that one I would recommend. And I'm only pulling the title out of my head. I think it was called Monsters.
Bill?
I think it's fascinating that kaiju have become so ingrained into pop culture that now you're seeing people say things like, I'd like to do a rom-com, and hey, what if there were giant monsters in it? And like, yeah, give it a shot. So you had that weird little art film, Colossal, which was like the strangest idea for a film, and I loved it. It's nuts if you get a chance to watch that. I really, really like found footage kaiju movies because that's such a weird contradiction. But I like it because somebody was mentioning earlier that a lot of these films got away from the fact that people are being killed. After a while, people would run away from Godzilla, and you could see they're smiling, they're laughing. It's a good time. It didn't seem real. So I like the found footage stuff because it's what it would really be like if these things existed. you're just running and you're hoping you're running in the right direction, because if he decides to zig in the same place you zagged, it's all over. You're just running and hoping whatever way he picks doesn't get you. I do want to say one thing. There's a character we haven't mentioned, Gamera. And when I was a kid, I loved Gamera movies. Gamera movies were the stupidest. Other than maybe the first one, they were so dumb. They made the dumbest Godzilla movie look like Last Year at Marienbad. I mean, you know, they were so terrible, so cartoony, Ultramanish. And then they came back and made a few.
Don't rag on Ultraman like that. I
know,
love
I know.
Ultraman.
The 1990s ones were not bad.
No, they were good, and they really upped the threat level too. You know, Gamera was no longer the protector of children; he was more the protector of the Earth. And frankly, humans that get stepped on, that's not really a problem for the Earth. It's probably all to the good. So, and it looks like they're bringing him back. Netflix is going to do a Gamera movie or a Gamera series. I don't know which one, and I hope they don't screw it up.
You know, Gamera is one of them that did one of my favorite things in a lot of the kaiju movies is that we always have a young woman character or a young girl character who is connected in some way. Sometimes she's the scientist who can figure it out. And in the Gamera movies, there's just that girl who gets kind of like linked to him right through in the 1990s ones, I mean,
right,
where she has the little stone thing. And so when he gets hurt, she gets hurt, and it's very interesting. And then they did the trauma version of that in what was that? That's a Gamera as well. The Revenge of Iris or Iris.
Revenge of Iris, yes.
Yeah.
They're really good films. If you can find them, they're not as easily available as a lot of these other ones.
If you live anywhere near Durham, the Carolina Festival, the Carolina Cinema, Carolina Theater in Durham just did Kaiju Quest several Wednesdays, and they're doing another round of it for the new season that starts in January. I've got my season pass. I'm ready to go.
You might see me there.
But they did the 1990s Gameras, all three of them, as part of the ones they played this year.
And Bill, when you said you want to see the rom-com, the thought I had now is going to be that Hallmark is going to do one where,
oh my God,
so just a small
King Kong is a florist in town taking care of all the good trees. Godzilla comes back from a trip overseas, and love ensues. This is the next Hallmark movie.
And one of them's going to open a bookstore.
It writes itself.
It does.
No. They're going to open up a flame. It's a flame pizza place. Wood fire pizza place.
Yeah.
I'm just a kaiju standing in front of a giant gorilla, asking him to love me.
I can't wait for the porn version.
Bow chicka wow wow.
So Stephen, before we go any further down the bad trail that I started,
it is your fault, Jim.
It's always my fault. It's always my fault. So what's your favorite rom-com? I mean, sorry, wait.
Well, Sleepless in Seattle always kind of, gets me. All right. So what's my favorite?
So, outside of, kind of what's your favorite modern take? What are the modern monsters you like? And what are you hoping to see out of them?
Well, I'll say, piggybacking off of something Bill said, that Cloverfield movie, that got a completely different reaction out of me. That drew up more actual fear, I think.
Yeah,
because that was like people were really getting jacked in that one. And especially that stuff in the subway with the babies and all this other. That was rough. And Colossal was hilarious. So that's like, now you're taking me over here, and then you got Cloverfield over there. That would be an interesting mashup, actually. And so Gamera, I remember Gamera, of course. and I've always been a little, as much as I enjoy the interaction in the Godzilla movies between, like, you know, the little Shojubin and whoever, like just random, like in the Gamera movies, it never felt like completely, because he looks so fearsome, but then he cares about these little kids, and then the little kids have to go in and rescue him because the monster put like babies in his throat, if you remember that movie.
Great plots.
Yeah, like craziness. And I'm kind of like like it was just almost too much love. I like God. The thing about Godzilla is, you know, you still little to him. You know, it's like he may like decide to take it easy on the human race or whatever, but he's not like just sitting there like, you know, oh, look at the little babies. Because that's kind of like what Gamera's doing. And it's like, that just kind of took me out of it a little bit. But I mean, I respect Gamera, don't get me wrong. So
yeah, although when it was Gamera in a rubber suit, you always felt like just knock him on his back, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Put him on a fence post.
Well, that's what they did, and they thought, we got this taken care of. Then he just pulls everything in, and jets shoot out, and he starts spinning. It's like, oh, he can fly. Well, why not? Sure.
Right.
So much for that plan.
I always see Gamera as the grandfather, Teenage Ninja Turtles or something like that.
All right, Glenn, how about you? For you, what's your favorite take on the kaiju, modern kaiju?
You know, I'm going to go nostalgic on this in spite of everything I've said. The first Godzilla movie that I saw with Raymond Burr, it still gets me. I mean, I love CGI. I think it's done better, but you know, that caught me just because I didn't know what was going to happen. I thought he was going to wipe out everything, and he just goes away. You know, not because of what they did. That had nothing to do with it. He just left. I loved it.
I am taking my fire breath and going home.
That's it. I've had fun.
So now I'm going to ask
party later.
Yeah, well, but I'll be back.
Yeah,
in the sequel, as long as you buy enough tickets. So, Greg,
Jim, I want to mention one thing real quickly, if I can.
Oh, yeah.
Are any of you guys familiar with a movie, a fairly recent one called Big Man Japan?
No.
No.
I've seen like a preview for it or something, but I've not seen the
Try
movie.
to find it. I saw it on streaming. I don't know where, Netflix, Hulu, something or other. I don't want to say too much about it,
Right.
but it involves kaiju and the sort of Japanese storylines around it. But it's one of the strangest films I think I've ever seen. But I'll just mention it. Big Man Japan.
I will second his
Japan.
recommendation. It's unique and a lot of fun. If you love kaiju,
And they're a bell bottom.
You had me until bell bottoms. Sorry, I got to add it to the list while we're sitting here talking. Y'all can talk amongst yourselves. But no, let me throw kind of a last question out there. With all the stuff that we've been talking about here around kaiju, there's always something we don't get to, like, you know, what the favorite movie is, or something like what Clay's bringing up. So, Greg, against my better judgment, what's the one thing around kaiju we have not gotten to?
Besides sex? I'm not sure. So much we've gotten communication with the kaiju. Not very well, but it's happened. And maybe a totally sympathetic kaiju. I'm not sure.
So
I'd have to think about this one.
So, Samantha, what's the thing we haven't hit on tonight around the kaiju?
I don't think we've talked about the different efforts that have been made to try to control them and how that went, you know, with in the more recent ones, like using sound to get them to go where you wanted them to go. And in destroy all monsters, which apparently I'm going to talk about a lot today. It was something like implanted in them, wasn't it? That was kind of controlling the monsters. The
yeah.
aliens did. Yeah. So, that's an interesting idea, is the attempt to control. And I also think we didn't, there's a whole range, in the movie, depend on where the kaiju stands in its motivations, like whether it cares about humans or not, if it's serving the planet, if it's just kind of a scary ancient thing and is, as likely to kill us as to protect us. There's such a range of motivations. And because kaiju don't talk, and even when they have like a psychic connection, it's not a real articulate psychic connection. We're free to interpret what they're doing however we want. And so it'd be interesting to find a way in a story to actually let us know what the kaiju is thinking and how we've been misinterpreting all their actions in every story we've ever done involving them.
Clay? What's the thing what do you want to kind of hit on we haven't talked about tonight?
Well, I don't want to go into body shaming, but let's face it, Godzilla has gotten really fat over the years. You look at the original, and I don't mean just big, because he's gotten a lot bigger than the original Godzilla, but this guy's huge. I mean, he's got a tiny little head now. His thighs are just monstrous.
It's very pear-shaped.
Don't forget leg day. Come on. I mean, guy is,
thick thighs save lives. Sorry.
You're right. It's his life, and he can do what he wants. But he's a hunk of monster. He might want to look into a salad.
Well, eating modern people is just not healthy for you.
No.
Bill, or are you gonna just run from this question?
I was about to run. Something collapsed behind me, but okay, I'll address that later.
So what's the thing we haven't talked about tonight that you want to make sure we get in about our favorite kaiju?
My theory is that the kaiju are the great filter, and because they talk, how come we haven't been contacted by aliens? And one of the fears is that there's something that all civilizations do at a certain point that wipes them out, and that's it. And we just haven't gotten there yet, but we will get there one day. And I think whatever it is, particle accelerators, messing around with, recipes, whatever, it creates kaiju. And they come out, they wipe everything out. And so on the one hand, boy, that's really a bummer because that's our eventual fate. But it does mean that there are probably millions of planets of nothing but kaiju, which frankly is way more interesting to me than actually contacting aliens, because that I could just see where that would go badly. But planets of kaiju, oh yeah, I'm there.
Wasn't that the plot of Pacific Rim?
Was that what they were doing? I thought. See, I
think it was supposed to be another dimension, but
yeah, they were like encroaching on us.
Mm-hmm.
I love Pacific Rim, but I don't think I was actually paying that much attention to
the whys and wheres.
It was just so pretty. I love the color palette of that film. Is just
you can enjoy it without you could just turn off the sound and still really enjoy it. Yeah.
Huh.
Stephen, what's the thing we haven't hit on tonight?
How sometimes the whole military and the back and forth and all of that actually slows these movies down considerably.
Without slowing down the monsters.
Right, exactly. And I get it. They want us to care about, the people that are orchestrating the whole strategy of beating the monster as they're, descending upon Tokyo and everything else like that. But sometimes they get just real annoying. And then there's other little things like okay, so we're supposed to be having a big meeting in the UN, but everybody's Japanese. There might be one white guy. It's no Africans. There's no nothing. Nobody from France.
Nick Adams is there though.
And to me, that's just kind of lazy. It's like, all right, so it's supposed to be the UN, let's call my man Muhammad real quick. Let's get him down here. It's like stuff like that, that. And I do remember really being weirded out that one time that they were actually successfully killing the aliens and they were turning into these close-up shots of cockroaches. Like that really bothered me as a little kid because we already had roaches, so I didn't really need to see them on the television in a close-up. But yeah, those are my thoughts.
Glenn?
Well, first of all, for Steve, when you make a movie on a budget, you work with the cast you got. I mean,
no doubt.
You try to avoid blackface, but you work with the cast you got.
Yeah, we ain't flying anybody in. We've already got
dancing around is a good origin story. And they've never really touched on that. They kind of hint at it a little bit here and there, but they never really deep dive into a good origin story for any of these. I want to know where they came from. How is he the only one? I mean, there should be bunches of them. What's going on?
They did touch on that on Godzilla versus Ghidorah in the latest, the last Godzilla, where they have time travelers who go back in time and actually cause Godzilla to be created and Ghidorah to be created. It didn't make a lick of sense, but
okay,
they tried.
All right.
Well, I mean, iguanas getting bathed in radiation on Bikini Island. Yeah, I mean, that's where we started with all of it. Well, I don't think we've solved anything other than the fact that Godzilla is still king of the monsters.
And he can't get a date.
But before we get out of here, let's make sure everybody knows where to find you guys, website, social media, what that latest book is out that you've got if you wanna. So Samantha, you're up first.
So hello again, I'm Samantha Bryant. You can find me at samanthebryant.com because I'm just really creative with my website naming. I'm most well known for my menopausal superhero series, but I also write a lot of short horror, and you can find my catalog on Amazon. I've made a bit.ly out of it, bit.ly/Samantha Bryant with capitals for both of my names.
Clay?
Clay Griffith, part of Clay and Susan Griffith. We are at clayandsusangriffith.com, and we're both on Facebook separately and as Clay and Susan Griffith. So that's where we are.
Bill?
You can find me on Decades of Horror, the 1970s and 1980s podcast. It's part of gruesomemagazine.com.
Stephen
Van Patten again. I write about vampires, serial killers. I also, in my work, I strive to, adhere to a certain level of inclusion. I've got a bunch of short stories in a bunch of people's anthologies. Most recently, my contribution to Under Twin Suns made Ellen Dotlow's Best in Horror for 2022. Yay me. I can be found on Facebook by the government name, Stephen Van Patten. And my website is www.laughingblackvampire.com.
Glenn?
Well, again, boring. GlennParris.com. Glenn with 2 N's, Parris with 2 R's, no H. And I write science fiction that is apropos this panel. Dragon's Heir, the Return of the Dinosaurs. They're not what you expect. I've written for Marvel for the Black Panther, and the latest movie is almost a sequel of my story, The Underside of Darkness. The Black Panther of 1912's first brush with Atlantis. And my latest short story is in an anthology called Terminus from Atlanta here, called The Sleepwalking Dead. And I'll let you kind of dig into that if you're interested in reading about zompires. Vampires that sleepwalk during the day.
Greg?
Well, I do everything that I do is announced on my artist webpage on Facebook, which is facebook.com/IV Caffeine. That's IVCAFFEINE. And if I do a new cartoon, or if I do a series of photographs or anything, I'll put it there, and it'll be announced there.
And I've had the pleasure of trying to herd this batch of kaiju myself tonight. I'm Jim Nettles. You can find me at jamesbnettles.com, authoressentials.net, authoressentialsworkshops.com, speculativefictionacademy.com, and of course, here at ConTinual, as I continue to make poor choices. Good night, everybody. We'll see you again soon.
Good night.
Good night.